Hi, it's Jane. I'm not down at the allotment today, but I am here bringing you some amazing inspiration because we are in show season for gardens. And today I'm talking to a plants person, a designer. He has been in show gardens, and this year he's doing something really rather amazing at BBC Gardeners World, and that is the fabulous Nick Bailey.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me because I can imagine that you are really busy at the moment because we are sort of the end of May, and between the sort of the 12th and the 15th of June, you are the headline garden designer at BBC Gardeners World Live. So how is that going?
Why do I agree to do these things? I mean, why? I'm a glutton for punishment. Doing show gardens is sort of incredibly stressful, but also incredibly rewarding as well. I mean, how many gardens do you get to kind of put together in 2 or 3 weeks and then get, tens of thousands of people seeing them and then millions of people seeing them, on TV. So it's a real privilege to do, but yeah, it's pretty stressful. It's sort of coordinating a whole lot of plants, the nature of show gardens. It's holding some things back, pushing other things forward, making sure it all kind of peaks at the exact moment. There's a lot of different staff, a lot of different skills, and different people, of course, always go into making a garden. Then there's the logistics as well. So yeah, it's pretty stressful, but it's nice to have that kind of instant reward. And I think the lovely thing as well for this particular garden, it's got a second life. So it will go off to the YMCA in Leicester and to the University of Leicester Botanic Gardens. So it's complete cycle.
So, I mean, the headline garden this year, so it is called the plant-based garden. So I'm really excited because I'm a fruit and veg girl. So what is in this garden? What is your journey into this space that you have created or are creating?
I mean, I guess most people, Jane, would just kind of say, "Isn't every garden plant-based?" Because they're full of plants, and absolutely right. But what I'm trying to convey is the fact that the hard landscape can be made of plants as well. So, the entire being of the garden can be of sort of organic origin, let's say. And so, with this particular garden, we're not using any plastic, we're not using any glass, we're not using any steel, and we're not using any concrete. And I think it's a bit of a shame as gardeners, as kind of ecologically thinking people, that we do accidentally end up consuming ridiculous amounts of some of these quite unsustainable products. So I just kind of want to show that without huge expense, it's possible to sort of create a lot in the garden very, very economically, inexpensively, and with the environment in mind. So for example, the main building material through the garden is Western red cedar. And so it looks like that kind of that sort of wonderful gingery tone to it. It naturally ages. It's got resins in it which protect it for literally decades. You can construct everything from buildings to pergolas to bits of decking in the garden from it. It's grown in Britain, so its transport miles are minimal. It doesn't need to have a preservative put on it because it's its own preservative. And then we're using a technique as well, this ancient Japanese technique called I'm going to get this right now, shugiban, which is about burning the surface of the timber, which basically then preserves it for decades and decades. And so it gives a strong aesthetic. And it sort of just shows as well that, you can treat that one timber in multiple different ways. It can have a plain surface, it can have a scoured surface, it can have a rough cut surface for decks, it can be blackened or changed. And so it's really just to convey that message that it's possible to do it all with plants. And the stat I keep finding myself quoting is, everybody gets worried about emissions from airplanes and the environmental impact of that. In fact, airplanes only produce about 2.5% of global emissions. The real criminal, or one of the real criminals, is concrete, which is unbelievable. It's 8.5% of global emissions come from concrete production. So that's one of the big drivers for me for simply not wanting to use it if I can get away with it.
I love that. And obviously, because you've got the cedar, and like you say, it ages, the garden is going to have that additional life after the show. So that's going to just look absolutely phenomenal as it goes over time as well. Also, as well, absolutely, because allotmenteers do this quite naturally all the time. Although I do have plastic, but I have to say, I know that you are doing something rather interesting with your brassicas, which, gardeners, we know that brassicas are going to be attacked by everything, snails, slugs, caterpillars, butterflies, birds, pigeons.
Pigeons, dinosaurs, anything will go for your cabbages.
Absolutely. So what are you doing that's actually plant-based? I know that sounds crazy because it is plant-based, but to protect your brassicas.
Yeah, so this is there's a whole series of kind of innovative products which are starting to appear in horticulture, which is fantastic. And so the garden is split in two. Half of it's ornamental and half of it's productive. So we're doing lots of raised beds with fruits and vegetables, herbs, medicinal plants, cut flowers and the like. And then beside that we've got what I'm sort of slightly jokingly calling a brassicarium. So it's a specific kind of frame of a building, but it doesn't have walls or a roof. It's just a frame. And the idea is that you've got your brassicas underneath. It can remain open at times of the year where they're not at risk, which is about half a day in early January. Um, but um, but at all other times, this frame basically can have a mesh put over it. And I'm sure everybody's come across the products that have been endorsed by our big gardening charities over the last few years, which are a plastic-based, very, very fine mesh, which you can put over veg to protect from all the critters you were mentioning, but not very sustainable. It's plastic, right? However, there's a new product that's appeared, and there's a few different companies producing it, and it does exactly the same thing, except it's made from plants. It's made from sweet corn, and so it will do exactly the same job as the plastic mesh for about 8 years, and then you can just put it into the compost. It will break down into its constituent parts, go back into the garden, and you can start over again. So, for me, that kind of really embodies the idea. It's a plant protecting a plant surrounded by a plant.
That's absolutely brilliant. And obviously, that's all stuff that we already have in our growing areas anyway. Now, you're actually really quite well known for your colours, having beautiful colours in the garden. So, what kind of colours are we going to be finding in your headline garden?
Oh, I'm glad you asked for that. So the backdrop to all the planting is this sort of cluster of central buildings, which is done with the Western red cedar and then the sort of burnt surfaces. So it's basically a tan and a black background for all of the planting. And so I've sort of slightly picked that up in some of the planting. So I absolutely love anything in the sort of orange, peachy, apricot range. And that's the colour I get asked most not to put into gardens. And it's such a shame because I love it. But so yeah, there'll be orange in there, sort of picking out those notes of the tan. But the basic palette is sort of yeah, sort of peachy orange through to apricot, burgundy, and then the sort of full range of blues from kind of navy through to the palest and white. And so what I've sort of quite specifically done is to exclude two colours, which can be a really sort of useful tip for getting a cohesive palette without anything that's sort of too attention grabbing. So I've literally chosen to knock out red and yellow completely, so nothing in the garden will be those colours, but everything else goes, and so there'll be lots of white and black and everything else in there. But that for me is a nice way of getting this kind of palette that holds together across the whole garden.
It sounds stunning and I can't wait to see it. So obviously you've got the buildings in the middle, and quite often when we're looking at show gardens, it's sort of almost like a proscenium arch. You can see it from one angle, but having looked at your design, it's almost like a theatre in the round. You can see it from all angles. Was that purposeful?
Well, thank you. I'm going to nick that quote from you. Theatre in the round. That's great. Yes. Yeah, it was. I think, as you say, so many show gardens have um, basically the one face that you can look at them, or two if you're lucky. I wanted to try and do something different with this, partly to give people the best experience of viewing the garden. So if you can see it from all four sides, you're not sort of compromised by having to clamber through people or seeing too many people around the garden. So, and the idea is basically it's a whole series of vignettes pointing into the center of the garden, so people can stand anywhere around the outside of it, and it shouldn't be too compromised. And there's also this idea people love walking through show gardens until they've actually walked through a show garden. And I think what people don't realize so much of the time is show gardens are uniquely weird in as much as they're designed to be viewed from the outside in.
Mhm.
Whereas, of course, all of our gardens that we live in are designed to be viewed from the inside looking out, right?
Yeah.
So it creates a very sort of odd dynamic. And then I think for people looking into that garden, if there's a load of other gardeners, other visitors wandering around in it, suddenly the magic is just completely gone and it's compromised. And those people in the middle, once they get into the garden, suddenly realize what they're seeing is a load of other people looking at a garden. It's no longer the magic. You need to stand on the outside and look in. If you're on the inside looking out, you just see other folk. So yeah, so I'm slightly limiting the access to the garden this year, for that reason, specifically to give the most people possible the best experience of the garden. So it's essentially going to be open once an hour on the hour for about 10 minutes, and people can pour through and suddenly go, oh, all I can actually see is other people. I won't do this again.
No,
And
I have sharp elbows, so I am going to be in there, and I do have a habit of literally sticking my face into plants to have a really good nose.
Great, engage.
I am going to be in there, so yeah, just watch out for me because I will be sharp elbows getting in there. Now, obviously, the size of your garden, the headline garden, is interesting because obviously you're also doing the make a meter matter, but the garden is bigger than a meter. So for anyone going to the NEC, they're not going to turn up and just see sort of 1 meter, and that's the headline garden.
Mm.
Tell me a bit more about make a meter matters.
So this is a campaign basically that's running through BBC Gardeners World throughout 2025. And it's this notion really that even if you've got the tiniest space, you can make a difference in terms of growing. And so we've taken it down to a square meter. And if people sort of struggle to envisage what that is, if you imagine kind of the sort of square inspection tanks you've always got in roads and pavements, those metal inspection tanks. If you put four of those in a little square, that's about a square meter. And so the idea was to sort of invite people to, to make a difference by dedicating a square meter of their garden to something different. So it might be veg production, it might be making a square meter pond, it might be a square meter dedicated purely to kind of long flowering plants for pollinators. And so far, I'm thrilled to say that readers of the magazine and watchers of the program have this is individual 9,000 square meters have now been dedicated to the program. So according to my maths, 9,000 square meters equates to loads of space. Um,
Amazing, give me mileage then.
Yeah. No, but in all seriousness, that 9,000 square meters is a lot, and so we wanted to sort of embody that idea in the garden. So the whole show garden is on a 1 meter grid, and so everything in it effectively is in blocks or proportions of 1 meter. So there's lots of individual blocks of 1 meter planting. So there's pollinator planting, there's cut flowers, there's veg being grown in that way. The compost bins are also a square meter. Our birdhouse, our elevated birdhouse, which sits above all of the other buildings, is literally 1 cubic meter. Our ponds at the front of the ornamental side, each one is a square meter. And so, if you look at the garden on plan, it looks like a game of Tetris. Actually, those interlinking blocks that all work together. Those interlinking blocks, yeah. So yeah, so it kind of just embodies that idea that you, even with the smallest of space, you really can make a difference.
That's brilliant because again, because when we come to the big garden shows as visitors, as gardeners, we want to get that inspiration. And I love the idea of the grid. So you can just take a little section of it and envisage how you're going to put that into your growing space. And obviously you've got interlinked with that biodiversity as well, that idea of sort of creating those highways for our nature, which is absolutely
Mm.
phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly. And so I mean, the garden, of course, is a real mix of plants, but there's a lot of substantial trees in there as well. And so it should mean that, and most people can do this, even with quite small gardens, that virtually year round you've got something in flower, something supporting pollinators. We're leaving some areas deliberately scruffy, and again, that's a great way of just sort of supporting and working closer with nature and making your garden sort of part of that wider eco web. So many people sort of seem to want to kind of turf out to the edges and get rid of all life. And our gardens are a huge proportion of this country, and we really can make a meter matter and make a difference to wildlife, to ecology, and just to the wider landscape by dedicating a meter to growing something different.
So incredibly busy for everybody. And just, I'm sure it's going to be absolutely stunning. I can't wait to get my feet on the ground and obviously my face into your plants as well. I will do that. And I will see you in a couple of weeks and all the very best of luck and hope that the weather behaves itself.
Indeed. Fantastic. Look forward to it. Look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you ever so much for talking to me today.
Thank you.